What is Hellenic Polytheism? In very simple terms, Hellenic Polytheism, also known as dodecatheism and Hellenismos, is the worship of the Greek gods. But it goes even further than that, into following in the footsteps of those who came before us. Some of us seek to revive or recreate the ancient practices. Some of us seek to merge ancient practices and rites to fit more into the modern world. Many of us blend the two together into a practice that is all our own. There are as many ways to practice Hellenic polytheism as there are people. As such, this podcast will simply be a window into how I practice. It is meant to guide and to inform, but it is also meant to help people like me. Like many people in the United States, I was raised in a very Christian household. I was taken to church every Sunday that I couldn't get out of it until I was 18. I spent every Sunday listening to sermons and being shuffled into Bible study. When I was 12, I discovered Hellenic polytheism as an actual religion through one of the many books I had devoured. For many years, reading and researching were my only forms of practicing. My mother and stepfather wouldn't even let me have candles or incense because their fear of me being anything other than a Christian was so intense. So I read and learned and hid an altar in the back of my closet at 16. At 31, I found myself missing that sense of community. I live in a rural town in North Texas where our population of 1,400 people is served by no less than 10 churches in our city limits. This podcast will be a way for me to reach out to others because who knows? Maybe someone like who I used to be will find it and it will help them. I fully intend for this to be released on a bi-weekly basis. So, now that we have a basic definition of what Hellenic polytheism is and an understanding of what this podcast intends to accomplish, we can move on to the next step, which is, what am I going to be talking about this whole time? I've got a set of, for lack of a better word, lesson plans, and today is going to be all about sharing those with you. First, we're going to start with the pillars of Hellenic polytheism, which are Xenia, Charis, Arete, Sophia, Sophrosune, Eusebia, and Hagnia. Next up will be the Delphic maxims, of which there are 144. Don't worry, each one will not have its own lesson plan. We'll just be covering the basics and discussing what it means to live by them, as well as what they are. Then we will have a simple Meet the Gods, where I introduce some of the more common theoi and discuss why there are more than the 12 Olympians that most start out with. After that, we will discuss altars and offerings, followed by hymns, epithets, and prayers. We will discuss ancestors and heroes. We will go over some basic household worship things that anyone can do, including some closeted actions, as well as more complicated rituals such as weddings, funerals, and holidays. I will also introduce the calendar that I use to help me with my own sense of religious fulfillment. In today's world, where Christian holidays have infiltrated everywhere to the point where they have become almost secular in their practice, I find it is important to me to have my own holidays that I can fall back on. Next, I will talk about how to engage in your own research and how to vet sources. In today's world of trans-exclusionary radical feminisms, otherwise known as TERFs, invasive white supremacists, and casual cultural appropriation, it is very important that you get a good sense of discernment. Finally, we will take a more in-depth look at the various deities, titans, nymphs, heroes, and delve into the myths and stories that help us learn more about them. Now for a disclaimer. I am not a student of history, and I am not a student of classical literature. I am not, in fact, a student anymore at all. I am a single parent of 2 kids with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice who works as a manager at a payday loan company. My only claim as someone you should listen to is the fact that I have been reading and practicing for almost 20 years now. I will always cite my sources, and if you want to do further reading, I invite you to look on my blog on Tumblr entitled Goddess Does Witchery. This blog will also hold transcripts of the podcast should anyone want them. Now that you have the syllabus, I believe it is time to start the class.